Welcome to research methodology. Today we're going to consider a topic which is called the nature of research. I am your instructor, Mr. Maulusi Slukena. We make a progress like I've already indicated. We are looking at the nature of research. So now, when we say the nature of research, what does that mean? So now the nature of research here refers to the essential qualities, features, and characteristics that distinguish research from ordinary inquiry or casual investigation. That's the meaning of nature of research. So we are looking at those essential qualities, features, and characteristics that makes research different or distinguished from ordinary inquiry, or maybe casual investigation. So now research is not really conducted in a random way. So it actually follows, scientific principles and organized procedures. So understanding the nature of research is of great significance. Why? Because it helps students appreciate how research is conducted and why it is conducted in that manner. So it is considered a reliable method of generating knowledge. Okay, right. So that's what we are trying to gather here. So now, you understand that at degree level, more especially in institutions such as universities, students are expected to do what? To understand the scientific nature of research so as to conduct credible academic studies, right? You need to understand that research is systematic. So remember, we are looking at the nature of research. So the first nature we are going to talk about is that research is systematic. This simply means that research is systematic. Why? Because it follows a clear, organized, and step-by-step procedure. So researchers do not just collect or gather information randomly. So they actually follow established stages, such as identifying the problem. Such as identifying the problem, mean that when you're conducting your research, you need to identify the problem. Then from there, you need to do what? To review the literature. You need to review the literature or maybe what has been written about the topic that you are carrying a research on. Then after that, you formulate objectives or hypotheses. Then you collect data, and then you analyze the findings, and then after that, you draw the conclusion. So that's what it means when we say that research is systematic. That's the first nature of research. It's systematic. So it does not follow a random way of doing things, but it follows established stages. And those stages, we have identification of the problem, review of literature, formulating objectives or hypotheses, collecting data, analyzing findings, and drawing conclusions. Right? Now, you understand that a systematic approach is important. Why? Because it minimizes confusion or errors. So it also actually follows other researchers so as to understand and replicate the study. So now, without systematic procedures, research findings may actually become unreliable and difficult to do to verify. Right. So we are still looking at the nature of research. So number two, research is scientific. So when we say that research is scientific, what does it mean? So research is regarded to be scientific. Why? Because it uses scientific methods, logical reasoning. It uses what? Scientific methods, logical reasonings, and also evidence so as to investigate problems and generate conclusions. So scientific research actually now depends on observation. Scientific research depends on what? Observation, testing, and verification, instead of just assumptions or emotions. So a research that is based on assumptions or emotions, that's not a research, because the findings may not be that accurate. But when it comes to this issue of scientific research, it depends on observations made, the testing that have been made, and the verification that have been carried out. And we do not make use of assumptions. Right, so that's what we mean when we say that research is scientific. That's the meaning of that. So now scientific methods are important. Why? Because they help ensure that findings are factual and dependable. So researchers actually rely on evidence and accepted procedures for us to explain relationships between what? Variables or phenomena. Right, so now research is objective. This is another nature of research. Research is objective. What does that mean? Research is regarded to be objective because it avoids personal bias, prejudice, or emotions. So that's what we mean when we say the research is objective. It avoids issues to do with what? Personal bias or prejudice, as well as what? Emotions. So now the researcher must focus on factual information and evidence rather than what? Personal beliefs or expectations. So that sometimes when a researcher may carry out a research with expectations, his personal or her personal expectations. So now if not careful, if not objective, then somebody may make conclusions based on his thinking and his expectations instead of following the findings that have been put in place. Why? Because somebody was trying to apply personal bias, prejudice, or emotions. So research is objective, meaning that it avoids all those things like personal bias, prejudice, or emotions. Right, so now objectivity is important. Why? Because it ensures fairness and truthfulness in research findings. So researchers are actually now expected to report results honestly, even if the findings do not support their expectations or hypotheses. This is very much important. Even when the findings do not support your expectations or your hypothesis. So you are the researcher. You are expected to report results in a honest way or honestly. Right. Okay, so now another nature of research, that research is empirical. So what does that mean? Or why do we say that research is empirical? Research is empirical, why? Because it is based on observable and measurable evidence obtained through experience. Obtained through experience, through observations, and experimentation, or possibly data collection. So now empirical research depends on real world evidence rather than what? Assumptions or imaginations. So in empirical research, there is nothing like making assumptions or imaginations. So empirical research on its own just depends on real world evidence. So now researchers hence gather data through questionnaires. How do you gather data as the researcher? You gather data through questionnaires, interviews, observations, experiments, as well as what? Documents. This is how you gather information as a researcher, or this is how you gather data as a researcher. Okay, right. We make a progress. Now, research is logical. This is another nature of research. So what do we mean when we say that research is logical? Research is logical. Why? Because it follows reasoning and rational thinking. So researchers use actually logical procedures to connect ideas, analyze information, and draw conclusions. So logical thinking helps researchers to do what? To interpret data correctly. So logical thinking is of great importance. Why? Because it helps researchers to interpret data correctly, establish relationships, that is between what? Variables, and what? And also avoid contradictions. So that's what researchers should do. So being logical in research is also very much important. So research is logical. Another nature of research, that research is analytical. Meaning what? Research is analytical. Why? Because it involves careful examination and interpretation of what? Collected information. The information that is collected, it is analyzed. Okay, there is always what? Careful examination. What is being examined? What is being examined is simply the data. Okay, the data that has been collected. So research is analytical. Why is it analytical? Because it involves careful examination and interpretation of what? Of the collected information. Remember, there is a stage where you need to collect data or information. We have already talked about this in the previous, in the preamble. Okay, so now researchers, hence, are required to do what? To break down that data into smaller parts so as to understand the patterns, understand the relationships, as well as what? The meaning. So analysis is important here now. Why? Because it helps you as a researcher to identify causes of what? To identify causes of problems, okay, trends and patterns, right? Similarities as well as what? Differences, and what? Relationships between what? Between variables. All right. So now you understand that research also is critical. Research is critical. What do we mean when we say that research is critical? Research is critical. This simply means that it involves questioning, evaluating, and examining ideas carefully before what? Accepting the conclusions. That's why it's regarded to be what? Critical. It involves questioning, it involves evaluating, it involves examinations. What are we evaluating? What are we examining? What are we questioning? The ideas. And this has to be done in a careful way. And that must be done before accepting the conclusions. So researchers here critically assess existing literature, methods that are used, reliability of information, and validity of conclusions that were introduced, or maybe which were brought up. Right. So research is replicable and verifiable. This is another nature of research. Research is replicable and verifiable. So what does that mean? So research is replicable. Why? Because other researchers can actually do what? Repeat the same study using similar procedures and obtain similar results. And once that happens, it means that your research is now verifiable. So it is verifiable. Why? Because findings can be checked and confirmed by other researchers as well. So that's the meaning of research being replicable and verifiable. It can be repeated and it can be verified. Okay. Why? Because findings can be checked and be confirmed by others. So replication and verification are important. Why? Because they increase confidence in research findings. So when the research is replicated and then the findings are similar to the findings of the previous research, that gives confidence. Okay, that gives confidence in people that actually the findings are what? Are correct, because even the other researchers have done the same and the findings are the same. So replication is important. Verification also increases confidence in research findings, because if somebody does the verification by checking the data, the conclusions, and then he or she comes to realize that the findings are just okay, then that will build confidence in people to say what we have is actually the correct information, and people now can make decisions based on those findings. Another nature of research is that research is ethical. Why is research ethical? Because it follows accepted moral principles and professional standards. So research, or I would say researchers, must actually respect the participants. Participants must be respected. The people that you are going to work with, those who are going to help give you data and the information, must be respected. As a researcher, you need to maintain confidentiality. This is very important. As a researcher, you need to respect the participants. You need to maintain confidentiality. Then you need to avoid plagiarism. Then obtain informed consent. You need to obtain informed consent, and also report findings must be done in a honest way. So that's what we mean when we say that research is ethical. So researchers must be there to respect the participants. They must maintain confidentiality as well as avoidance of plagiarism. Possibly also you need to obtain informed consent. Obtain informed consent. The participants must consent And then also finally, when you are done with everything, you report findings. The findings must be reported honestly. Okay. Right. Another nature of research, that research is problem solving oriented. What does that mean? Research is conducted for the purpose of solving existing problems, or rather improve understanding of issues that affects the society. So research identifies causes of problems. That's what research does. It identifies what? The causes of problems. Then it affects the effects of what situations. It first identifies the causes of problems. Then it also identifies the effects of situations, as well as what? Possible solutions, and also recommendation to the problem that was what? Identified. So the last thing here is your recommendations. You recommend what the next researcher can actually research on. Okay? And those recommendations must be based on the fact that once they are done, if people put those recommendations into consideration, the idea and the ultimate core is those recommendations, once embraced, they should provide solution to this problem which was identified. Right. Another nature of research, that research is knowledge generating. So why is it that research is knowledge generating? Research contributes to the creation of what? New knowledge. Research contributes to the creation of new knowledge and also improvement of existing knowledge. That's what makes research to be important and knowledge generating. So through research, new discoveries can be made, or new discoveries are made. Then existing theories can be tested, and then the new ideas and innovations can emerge. People can come up with new ideas after conducting the research. So new knowledge can be generated. The wonder why we say research is knowledge generating. So in conclusion, the nature of research shows that research is systematic, scientific, objective, empirical, logical, analytical, critical, ethical, replicable, problem-solving oriented, and knowledge generating. So now these characteristics are important, and they distinguish research from ordinary inquiry and make it a reliable method of what? Reliable method for generating knowledge and solving societal problems. Right. So now you can have your time by answering these questions. Like the first question says, explain the meaning of the nature of research. The other question says, discuss the systematic nature of research. Then the other question, question 3, says, explain why research is considered empirical and objectives. Then the other question says, discuss the ethical nature of research. So you can pause a bit, go through the questions, and then begin to answer the questions. Test yourself, the level of knowledge that you have acquired from this study. The last question says, explain how research contributes to knowledge generation and problem solving. So this is where we